Okay, hi guys. So my name is Gretchen. I'm here with my partner who works for Solar Sun World. I'm in Athens. I myself am a sustainable business owner. I own a bicycle advertising company. About a year ago, I cut up a couple of bikes and made these carts that hold 3 banners. With the bicycle parts and electrical conduit. So people pay me to advertise for them, their business or their event, and then I pay people 15 bucks an hour to drag these carts all over town. So I'm just really all about bikes and solar power, and I'm so happy to be here. I also am real bad about going to our local mayor and commission meetings and stuff like that, and nagging them. I kind of became a local figure as an environmental activist when I sang the mayor and commission a song after they voted not to protect our riparian buffers. I reworked Mississippi Goddamn to call out the commissioners who had voted against the riparian buffer ordinances. But I have a lot of respect for people who go to speak at their boards of commission meetings and mayor and commission meetings. And one of the people who recently did that was a man by the name of Chris Herron. He's the CEO of a craft brewery in Athens called Creature Comforts. There was an opportunity for a utility-scale solar farm in Oconee County, really close to Athens. It was a really great location, and he lived in this fancy schmancy neighborhood kind of near where this was going to go in, and he went to his Board of Commission meeting and spoke out against it, and the Board of Commission voted against it and killed the whole project. So I heard about that and I was pretty bummed out. So I stopped by his brewery and sang them a song. And I also called them out on Instagram about it because they were renovating this old dilapidated historic mill. And said, you guys need to put solar on that, shame on you, kind of. So he was offended by me being vocal, and he sent me a very long email kind of saying that, he was sorry that he had upset me, but he hoped that I wouldn't troll them online and be some kind of little hater and all of that. I've always really been inspired by letters that people have written over the years. Vincent van Gogh, I think, was the first person whose letters that I read. And I've always written people letters. I'm real big on sending people letters in the mail. I'm about to read you a letter that I wrote to Mr. Herron, sent to him at his house. And so it's not necessarily a poem, but I feel like if you send someone a letter, it gives them something to read over again. They can hold it, they can make notes on it, and it shows that you really have given them some thought. So here's this letter that I wrote. Good evening, Mr. Herron. Thank you for writing to me. I really appreciate the extemporaneous tone and candor of your message. I apologize if I rubbed you the wrong way, but thanks for taking the time to sit down and drop me a line. I will try to put together an informative, personal, and useful reply. First off, let me say that solar panels were first put into use in Americus, Georgia back in the 1950s. Think of where our state and our nation would be if this homegrown, revolutionary Georgia technology had been given anything like a fair shake in our history. Energy issues here in Georgia are very complicated, and also not so. When it comes to solar and renewable energy, the environment is downright hostile. For instance, counties such as neighboring Greene have boards of commissions passing prohibitive ordinances against solar, requiring large setbacks that would rarely be seen for chicken houses, to put it in perspective. Power is provided in part through a patchwork of regional EMCs, energy membership cooperatives, whose territory overlaps different county lines like a patchwork quilt, and each EMC has different carrots and sticks when it comes to solar. Some charge their customers with solar extra fees, some, like Jackson EMC, offer rebates. All of the EMCs buy power through third-party providers and therefore are more limited in the amount of renewables they can accommodate in their mix without affecting the contractual relationships they have with their providers. Residential solar is oftentimes prohibited through HOA covenants and historic preservation regulations, or the trees that people love to have on their properties, of course. Trees are great. Utility-scale solar is limited by local and regional factors such as these, but also by specific location. Close proximity to high-voltage transmission lines is paramount for utility-scale solar to be a viable investment. Otherwise, there is a lot of power lost in moving the energy from the generating site to the point of transmission. Solar panels generate DC current, which cannot be transmitted over long distances due to voltage loss, and thus it has to be converted to AC current, which takes electricity to accomplish in and of itself. So having a large megawatt array located next to the transmission lines and transfer stations is very important. Certainly the most hostile actor of all is Georgia Power, which actively thwarts solar in pretty much every way possible. While they have been charging ratepayers through the nose for the debacles that are plants Vogel and Kemper, they offer zero rebates for solar. They have a residential solar program, the cost of which they mark up by 30%. They refuse to charge anything close to fair market rate for solar power generated by homes and business customers. They sell power to us at approximately 13 cents a kilowatt hour and buy it for between 2 and 4 cents. This makes the average potential customer balk at the payback, which I can understand, but also not. Nobody thinks about the payback on a swimming pool or a kitchen reno or full-service lawn care or vacation or a motorcycle, for example. To add insult to injury, they are having a very hard time finding communities willing to accept the hundreds of tons of toxic coal ash that result from the burning of coal. We burn lignite coal, which is mined in Wyoming, some of the dirtiest coal to burn. Train cars full of it trundle down Pulaski Street past your brewery a few times a week. Our rural and poor communities end up paying the biggest price for it. Wayne, Jessup, and Elbert counties are both fighting coal ash dumps in their watersheds, as well as neighboring Monroe and Milledgeville and the Chattahoochee River watershed communities. There's a public meeting coming up on June 24th about the toxic waste that will be dewatered into Lake Sinclair as Plant Branch is decommissioned, and what to do with the sludge is a point of considerable conflict. But coal is only about 34% of the energy mix. Another 40% is delivered through natural gas, which is more and more mined through fracking. If you've never heard of fracking, I'll leave that for another time, or encourage you to do some research on the kinds of domestic upheaval and pollution caused by this radical mining practice. The pipelines that deliver fracked natural gas are by and large accomplished through the useful tool of eminent domain. Here's a little bit of history in that regard. Albany, Georgia is the home of the first ever land trust in the world, New Communities. This first land trust was also started by African Americans as a response to the segregation of the South in the 1950s. In the 1980s, having lost their land through discriminatory lending practices, for which they were compensated through a victory in a class action lawsuit against the Department of Agriculture, they were able to regain their property and found New Communities for the second time. The Sable Trail natural gas pipeline was gouged right through the middle of their property on its way to Florida. Governor Rick Scott of Florida has a 24% share of stock in Spectra Energy, the company behind the Sable Trail pipeline. The pipeline was rerouted to accommodate the desire of Ted Turner not to have it cross his property. I first became aware of your Southern Mill development in 2015 when I was working as the local volunteer coordinator for the Solarize Athens program. I tried to get a tour of the facility and to meet with the developer, but I was unsuccessful. I did, however, learn about the connections between the developer and our Public Service Commissioner, Tim Echols, who used to be the Chief of Staff for Congressman Paul Brown, whose brother is one of the investor developers, I believe. It was through this association that I met Mr. Echols. He would be a great person to talk with about energy policy, and particularly solar in Georgia. He is one of the pro-solar commissioners. However, hopefully he won't be the only one. We elect a new commissioner next year. Commissioner Echols can tell you about his evangelical call to stewardship and tangentially his spiritual calling as a modern-day abolitionist. Am I done? Sorry. Oh, do you guys want me to stop? Not very much longer. He can tell you about how Atlanta is the second largest market for sex slaves in the country, in part because of the international airport. What drives this large supply of sex slaves? In part, climate change. In impoverished countries where there is little to no infrastructure to begin with, 6 times the population of the United States lives without power and running water in India alone. When climate change weather events wipe out communities, often the people are left with no source of income but their daughters. I will only share one link with you in this long and novel email. Kung Fu nuns bike the Himalayas to oppose human trafficking. I am not the only lady on bike trying to sing it and bring it. All this doom and gloom aside, there are some encouraging things happening and some things you can do. The Southern Company shareholders voted at a recent annual meeting by nearly half to compel Georgia Power and Southern Company to start investing in renewable energy and also limit the compensation the top cheeses pay themselves. Elbert County, whose citizens are all up in arms with their shovels and pitchforks to fight the coal ash dump, I've been to the meetings, it's scary, is looking into investing in a 60-megawatt solar farm. The city of Elberton owns their own power corporation and sells it back to the county, and the 2 local boards of commissioners hate each other. So it will take some on-the-ground grassroots activism to support the initiative if it ever comes before the body for a vote. As far as the southern mill goes, put solar on it. It's right by those high transmission lines and the transfer station. You guys are in a great situation to start from scratch and do it right. Install a full radiant barrier on the roof to keep it as cool in there as possible. Your initiative would not only inspire other businesses and owners to do the same, show Georgia Power and our foreign competitors that we mean business when it comes to our energy, but also substantially lower your operating costs. Dun 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 dun. And then I talk about the return of investment. Do 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 do.
See Gretchen afterwards.